Howdy, Rob Lee here from The Truth in This Art, your source for conversations on arts and culture. And I'm here with a special message from my friends, my partners at the Station North Arts District. Station North Art Walks continue all summer, celebrating 20 years of Station North. Join us on Final Fridays as August 26th for a special spotlight on the Greenmount West neighborhood and September 30th for a district-wide celebration. For more information, visit stationnorth.org. Also, coming up, the Baltimore Rhythm Festival returns to the Greenmount West neighborhood on Saturday, September 17th. This free event features local and international artists, workshops, children's activities, open mics, vendors, and much, much more. For more information, visit baltimorerhythmfestival.org. Station North Arts District is a program of the Central Baltimore Partnership. Welcome to The Truth in This Art. I am your host, Rob Lee, and today I have the privilege of speaking with an artist, engineer, producer, the driving force behind Station North Sound. Please welcome William Herman. Welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me, Rob.
Thank you for coming on. This is going to be a lot of fun. I'm going to start off with this question. It's almost the running question is either what are the vital stats? Could you introduce yourself? So in that vein, could you tell us who you are and describe your work for those who aren't dipped?
Well, I am, as you said, an artist, a producer, and an engineer. I'm based in Baltimore, Maryland, and I work with mainly local independent artists in those roles. That means I record music, I mix music, I master it, and I also create original productions like either beats, film scores, cinema stuff, or stuff that's going to be transcribed to sheet music and played by musicians. Sorry, that was kind of a long
No, you're good.
Side on the production point. But as an artist, I'm also a singer. I sing on my own beats. I sing on other people's tracks. And I've been doing this since I was pretty young. I first got into audio recording when I had a guitar amp that had a built-in loop function. I was probably about 12 years old. It was like this really crappy guitar amp, but it had this amazing feature where you could actually record yourself and hear it back. And I just thought that was so crazy that I could just instantly hear a performance that I just created a moment ago that otherwise would have just been lost in the ether. And that's just the idea of recorded music has always fascinated and kind of captivated me.
That's great. I remember I was bumming around one day, and I think I've told part of the story before on the podcast, but I was bumming around one day, and I was in high school, and this shows you how nerdy and geeky this is, but I was in high school, and I went to City, and they had this whole, advanced, we were covering the classics and things of that nature, but this advanced writing class, and I was trying to impress a girl, and I found this it was this dubbing machine outside of an elementary school and it still worked. So I grabbed a tape and then I had some really gritty rap beat and I did a freestyle that I was in a character. I think I was recording it as Macbeth. So it was ridiculous. And, I gave it to my teacher and she played it in the class. I was embarrassed, but also I looked like I was like, oh, you're good.
Well, as long as the Ghost of Banquo didn't make it onto the recording, I bet.
Nice. I just wanted to use it as an excuse to say out damn spot, just with the DJ Clue sound effect in the background. It was great. So musically speaking, that's kind of the main area where a lot of people know, where your work is at, the production, the artistry side of things, and the support side of things, and in terms of engineering and just all of that, right? Do you have any philosophies that you apply to your work, and if so, what are they?
Well, my philosophies about production engineering when I'm in a support role have to do with why I do what I do in the first place. And the reason I love music is because it allows me and I find other people as well, to express things that they can't with words or gestures. It's a different medium of communication. It's its own medium. They say talking about music is like dancing about architecture. It's its own thing. And the fact that you can communicate things that you couldn't otherwise with music is fabulous to me, because I think communication's great. I think self-expression is like a inherently very valuable thing. Yeah. And humans benefit a lot from doing that. So with that being the reason I love music, specifically self-expression, communication, I always want to create an environment and an experience where the artists can express themselves in the most genuine way possible, and the way they feel comfortable and the way they intend, because that's the whole point from my perspective, is the expression, the actualization of self, and the connection that's created with other humans. I think that's the thing.
Yeah, that's great. I think some of the key words that I heard in there was just this, in paraphrasing obviously, but authenticity, being genuine, and having those voices being heard, that human connection, right? And I think here in Baltimore specifically, and working with local artists, we're not always in that spot, at least outside of this region, to get that crossover appeal, to be heard by a really large audience. So we really have to do our stuff ourselves, and really be able to build out what we're doing here, build out our voice, and be able to communicate with our folks here. And then maybe it grows out, but you have that strong base here. So as a creator and as a person working within the industry, and having Station North part of your name, so tell me how that's been in working within the community, and really, where do you feel like you fit in and offering? What do you offer the community? Like, we all offer something. I think I offer an outlet for exposure. I don't know, and an outlet for conversation, intellectual conversation. But where do you feel like you fit in, and what do you feel like you're offering, or what have you?
Well, I would start by saying I offer a recording studio at an affordable price compared to other studios. I have a lot of really nice equipment that I've slowly collected over the years by flipping and repairing stuff. And that equipment, along with the time I've taken to learn how to use it, allows me to help people create certain kinds of music they couldn't otherwise. I don't want this to get sound like I'm saying you need fancy equipment to make good music, because you really don't. And I'm the first person to say that. I've recorded, there are 2 songs on my upcoming project, Anno Me, that I recorded literally with the microphone in my 2013 MacBook Pro.
Nice.
Like, it is lo-fi. And I think that kind of stuff is super cool. I also think hi-fi stuff is super cool. And I am just one of a handful of recording studios in Baltimore that have like fancy outboard gear, for example. Yeah. And I think that's an important thing to offer and have access to. I also think more important than the gear, and even the person who's engineering, is the vibe of the space. Yeah. And I pride myself on curating a space that is like welcoming to everybody, and is a place where, like I said earlier, people can express themselves and feel like they're heard. That's really important to me. Mm-hmm. And I mean, people do tell me that I do that, so I guess I can toot my own horn a little bit, but I'm proud of that. Yeah. I'm very, that's my goal, is to be a space where the community and members of the community can express themselves in ways that are rewarding to them. And
that's important. Like, going back to what I was saying, like, it seems like you might get a handful of people who are able to broaden out and to really like kind of blow up in a way that is like, oh, we know you everywhere, what have you. Whereas here, there may be the sense that, the opportunities, and it's this notion I've been kind of hearing more and more and more of recently, of scarcity. And, I've come across like your work and you just being out there as, really saying like, look, come through, offering up space when different things were happening in the community, offering up opportunities for people to really have their voice be heard. So I commend you for that. It's like, that's great. And, I think that there's some overlap there. Like, again, like with doing this series, I feel like it came out of people saying this is what the Baltimore story is. These are who Baltimoreans are, and it's like, nah, I think we can speak for ourselves. I think we know how to speak for ourselves. I think we're good at that, and sometimes we might say it a little bit too real, but not everybody wants that, but we are who we are, and it's great to see that from your vantage point that's a commitment for you and opening up space. And I think the key thing that's there that people often forget is, it takes time to learn these things. Like, you were touching on, like, how to get lo-fi and hi-fi. You know how to work with really high-tech, high-quality equipment, high cost equipment, things of that nature. And you can go with something that's like, yo, this is dead tech. You're getting it going. And kind of the same thing, like being able to use a mixer versus using like a regular like Fast Track Pro and using various applications. That amount of skill and time and knowledge, that's something that's really offered within the community, because I think it's almost like certain jobs will have you. When there's turnover, it's like you lost that institutional knowledge. And I think we can't lose that within a community, like how many producers that are really 10 years deep or whatever are floating around with the state-of-the-art equipment and having this desire to be inclusive, be able to work with the community as a whole, not just one or two people who are popping. That's just my thought.
I think you're spot on that with that institutional knowledge point. I would say to that point, like a lot of what I've learned about how to be a good engineer and a good producer has come from this community, from the Baltimore community. I am like way better than I was 10 years ago. Like I would be embarrassed to watch myself do a session right now. That's probably not entirely true, but I've definitely am really grateful for the opportunities I've had to learn and develop my craft as a producer and engineer through this community. And I think the other thing that I would say I offer the community, just to go back to the last question really quickly, is I am never like a robot. I try as hard not to be a robot as possible. That doesn't mean that like if the artist wants to produce themselves, I'm going to say no to that. Like I encourage that, and I will shut up and press the buttons, but I'm not a robot. You know what I'm saying? It's like I want people to feel like they have an audience in me that cares about what they're saying and cares about what they're trying to express. And even if I'm just one person, I find that like that can really just like bring out stuff in people. If you just show you're genuinely interested in what they have to say, like people will shine and thrive. And I'm learning every day how to do that better, how to be a better listener, how to be a better audience member for music. But that is a key thing that I think I offer. I'm committed to listening to you if you come in for a session. I really am.
For sure. I've done some consulting for different podcasts, and really being a person that's an advocate for it, because it's work that goes into it. People should just think it's not as that. And I'll put it this way, and I would imagine you may have some thoughts on this. I know there's a lot of bad podcasts out there. I'm sure there's a lot of like mid producers floating around. It's like, you just let that happen, didn't you? You weren't a listener at all, were you? And you see it, and you want that experience with you and with your approach to be something that, you'll come back, or, you've learned something about that. You've learned something about your work, and they've learned something that they can carry on to maybe the next project and things of that nature.
I'm not going to lie. I don't think there are a lot of mid producers in Baltimore. The producers that I come across in Baltimore that I'm grateful to have come across and learned from are like exotic, like high grade, high THC content for sure. I mean, I'm thinking I'm thinking of guys like T. Ali, Dewey Lowe, Benjamin Banger, Decentive, That Goodfellas Crew, Talk to Nobody. I mean, Good Boy. I can rattle off a whole list of people who make beats and make songs with people. Produced by Mateo, who works at a Moose House. Like, there's so many great producers in Baltimore. There really are. I think we're like pretty elite, actually.
Oh yeah.
And the thing that makes us good, I think, when we are at our best, is our ability to listen, like you said.
Okay, yeah, that clarifies it. Then that sorts that out a little bit, because I'm not on that side of it, but now having a better understanding that's kind of baked in, that's great. And I think that comes from, we're very DIY in the city, right? So I think that comes from it, as well as that added value kind of component.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah, sure.
What do you mean by DIY?
Like kind of like do it yourself. Yeah.
Right. So like I hear people say DIY about the art scene in Baltimore a lot. And one thing people mean by that is there's not a big institution behind the art scene. It's individuals doing most of this as like freelance. That is true. But I feel like sometimes people mean other stuff by DIY, or they're not sure what they mean when they talk about DIY. It's almost because, like, I feel like in 10 years, DIY is going to be like a buzzword used in like some DC developer's gentrification scheme. It's like, yes, look how DIY our giant high rise is. Like I can hear it already. When
I go about it, I think of like kind of applying it to what my background is. Like, you know, while I look at doing it, I can't say that I'm professional, you know, in it, despite my intent is that. It's just like I don't have that credential on paper. I haven't worked at a radio station, right? But I think you put in a decade plus, you learn a lot of different things. You learn from different people. You know, I've learned from producers at radio stations and things of that nature, but my approach may not be that cookie cutter, that thing that you see. My approach is very much my own. And I would, like, while being very confident in what I do, I'll describe what I do as DIY, you know?
That's one of my favorite ways to interpret the word, which is I'm not going to conform to anyone else's standard of what the medium I'm making should be like. I'm going to do what I think it should be like. I think that is very common in Baltimore, and I'm so happy about that. I think that's great. People really, especially in music, want to make stuff that sounds like them. They don't care about sounding like Playboi Carti or Yeet or whatever. Like they want to sound like themselves. And I really think that's great.
And I think one of the things that comes in when I do like these like sorts of interviews or what have you, or any of the interviews I do, and you kind of get some people who are like, yeah, I'm just going to go through the motions. And you have some people like, no, hold on, run that back. Help me understand that a bit better, which makes the conversation kind of like roll like differently and make, you know, adds a different layer to it. And, you know, I'll have, you know, there are other things that are out here, you know, other interview types and other interviewers and so on. And they may ask the customer, so what is the Baltimore sound? And I'm like, what do you mean? And I rather ask them, like, what are those influences that are there? Like, maybe ask those questions that are off kilter, as I was describing to you earlier. I'm going to ask you about your Cheez-It flavors, man. Like, what are we doing here? And that might go into your process. It's like, look, man, if I'm having a really, you know, a toasty kind of day, and if I'm having a toasty day, my beats are going to be different. If I'm having a white cheddar day, you know, might be a little bit more strings involved in what I'm doing.
I think you're spot on with that. I don't know how PC we got to keep it, or PG-13 regarding the toastiness, but yeah, I smoke a lot of weed and I'm happy to do. I'll make beats. Like,
yeah. No, I mean, But authenticity is always the thing that matters, and true authenticity, not the whole, hey, I'll throw a 4-letter word out there to make it seem like I'm, legit or what have you, or I seem like I gained some credibility. It's like, what is the conversation? I've joked with people. I was like, look, if you want to get on here, the questions are more of a roadmap for me. But if we want to talk about cartoons for 30 minutes, it's like, look, we can talk about cartoons for 30 minutes. Can you mention you're a producer one time and then move to the next thing? And it's really just like, you tell the story. That's really how I look at it. And I try to pepper in some stuff that I'm particularly interested in and having, I guess, intellectual curiosity. That's pretty much it. Like, you want to learn what someone's process is, but I would imagine, as a person that's been doing this for a while, you hear those questions all the time. So tell me, how do you make beats? Like, that's not anything interesting, but what's baked into that process, that might be more interesting. What's baked into the environment that you're in and how being in Baltimore maybe contributes to what you're doing. So in that, it's my understanding that you're one of those go-to producers or whatever, and engineers in Baltimore. You've worked with the likes of Chaotic, you worked with Easy Jackson, and a list of others. And I mentioned those two because they both are alumni of this great podcast here. A little self-serving there for you. Tell me about working in Station North and how that's contributed to you being in this district or what have you. Like, working here, how has it made you like kind of navigate the district a bit more? Maybe learned and grown as an entity, because you're more than just a producer, you're more than an engineer, you're more than an artist. Tell me about that.
Well, the first thing I'll say is that when I actually first started recording and producing in Baltimore, I was on the edge of Station North.
Okay.
I was in Greenmount West. I was in the Annex by the Copycat. So I technically should have been Greenmount West sound. Just want to be honest about that. My studio right now is on 21st in Maryland, so I'm right in Station North.
You literally are.
Yes, and before that, I was at 23rd in St. Paul. So yes, I was in Station North. I really value live performance of music, as in like in front of a bigger audience, be it at the Crown, the Wind-Up Space, RIP, the Auto Bar, Joe Squared, whatever venue you want to go to. There are a lot of venues, and traditionally have been a lot of venues in Station North. We're always losing them, and new ones pop up. Some DIY, some underground, some more established, some with use and occupancy permits, some without. But that's always been a key part of my experience.
Yeah.
That's like a theme in my experience throughout my career here. And I think that just being able to go not too far from the studio and see a live show and like come back to the studio afterward with some artists or, some friends. That's always been an important part. Like, I never want it to be too far away. Mm-hmm. Also, Baltimore public transportation is bad, and it gets worse the farther away you get from Charles Street.
This is true. This is
you know
very
what
true.
I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's always been important to me to be accessible via public transportation. That's one of the reasons I like this location. About the I also want to say one more thing about like the geography of Baltimore.
Yeah.
And that's that Baltimore City is on a hill, right? Mm-hmm. It's all kind of sloping down towards the harbor. But there's this like little plateau right around North Avenue. That's like Station North.
Yeah.
I always thought it was interesting to be kind of like on the landing between two flights of stairs.
Yeah.
Like, you're kind of catching stuff that's coming down, but you're also like pushing more stuff downstream. I know it's kind of vague and abstract, but just the physical orientation of the studio and the space has always been something I thought about. The last thing I'll say on the Station North point is that a lot of my music could be seen or heard or interpreted as a cityscape. My music is foggy streetlights, foggy traffic lights. It's like steam coming up from the manholes. It's like mosquitoes and fireflies in the night. It's like a city at night. That's a big theme in my music. Not all my music is like that. I also have city in the daytime. I have some countryside music, but a lot of my music comes out like, and my girlfriend's pointed this out, my mom's pointed this out, other producers, other artists pointed this out. They're like, yeah, this is like driving on Saratoga Street by the train station, and they're all those like manholes, and there's like a back room somewhere where people are doing a numbers game. Like, that's what your music sounds like as a beat maker, as an artist. As an engineer or a producer, I do all kinds of music, but for my own stuff, that's often what comes out. And I think having literally had my studio and worked out of this neighborhood has influenced me in that way. Like, I just am creating what I'm seeing. It's just sound instead of vision.
Thank you for sharing that observation. That's dope. And I like what you said there about just kind of being accessible in the sense of go there, you maybe absorb something, you maybe add to that creative diet, if you will, and being able to quickly get back to your space. It may be some leftover fog, like, oh man, I observed something there. I got hit with the creative Holy Ghost. Let me get this down real quick. And as a person that I bring a notepad with me when I go to places, I always have something in my ears. Either it's audiobooks geared towards like, how do you relate to people? How do you ask these sorts of questions? And it's going to spark something. The mind is always going. So when you're absorbing something, you have to be able to get back to that home base. So I'm recording this from my normal home studio, but my away from home studios in Station North is that big improv. So I pop over there real quick. Let me get this interview real quick. Man, where you at? Come on over. And it just feels like their performance aspect is there because it's an improv space. I get hit with that. Like, oh, let me amplify this. Let me add a little bit more to this. Let me be a little bit more animated, and let's really engage in this conversation versus asking like, here's some questions. Let's keep it flat. Let's keep it normal, but amplifying it a bit more,
That's so interesting that you talk about physical space for the podcast. Because I wonder how we would even categorize the physical space we're in right now. It's over Zoom. It's like I'm in one physical space, you're in another physical space, we're meeting in this virtual space. Freaking crazy, man. Sorry, that really didn't have to do with anything.
No.
It's just I think here's what it had to do with.
Okay.
It had to do with because podcasting for you is a craft. Mm-hmm. You're kind of craftsman. You're developing it, and you have developed it for a long time. And you make this kind of boutique artisanal interview experience. And in a similar way that I make music in that way, and you're pointing out the influence of the physical space you're in when you do that on that process. Like, that is all art, all communication, really like all like life is heavily influenced by the physical spaces we're in. And that's one of the reasons I think recording studios will always have a place in music. Because you can say, and you hear this all the time, oh, everyone's got like a cheap interface or a cheap laptop microphone, and anyone can just make a song on their phone. Yeah, of course. Like that, there's no denying that. Like, that's true. But that doesn't mean that a dedicated space for that is not valuable either.
Correct.
Because just having a place you can go where lots of other people have in the past created in there, and you can kind of get their like residual spiritual energy or whatever mumbo jumbo you want to call it, and knowing that that's what you're there to do, I think is like a fantastic thing, and it helps more people. I think more good music gets created if people have spaces they feel comfortable dedicating their time to doing that in. That's my theory, and so far I've managed to stay in business, so it's bearing out to be true. I think it's good to have dedicated spaces for things, but it's also good to like record on the run. Like I love doing that too.
Yeah.
Every space is going to influence, like I was saying, every space is going to influence the art and the communication in some way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm down to I have this mobile equipment. I have this pod track joint that's super small. I can fit it in a fanny pack, and now I have lavalier mics. So literally, I can put my whole set. Like I can put 4 of them joints in there. All I need to have is some batteries. The whole setup is in there. I've conducted some of those interviews. Like people's like, "Hey, can you come to my space and do this interview?" I was like, "Yeah, sure." Like that's maybe where they feel the most comfortable. But as I'm recording in my space and you're recording in your space, I would imagine that you've done work, you've done production in your space. That's your recording space. And my second bedroom is I've converted it into my studio. So this is specifically for that purpose. So in a very remote way, we're in what our spaces is to do our creative practice. And it's like, this means business. You know what I mean? That's the way that it kind of hits for me. So I got 2 more real questions. And then I got some rapid fire questions for you. All right. So now you answered that already, so that's good. So I hear that the studio can have outtakes and odd occurrences. Do you have an experience that really sticks out? You're like, okay, yeah, this was weird. This is where a dude had to do a song and he wasn't wearing pants or something. Do you have a scenario that was like, this is wild, but we got it done? Tell me about any weird stories from the studio.
When you say you've heard that funky stuff can happen in the studio, are you referring to my studio?
Just studio generally, more macroly speaking.
All right. Yeah, I just wanted to get that straight.
Yeah, clearly. Yeah.
I didn't know if I had a reputation that was like,
no.
There are all sorts of strange things going on at Station North Sound. I don't know.
No, not at all. But I mean, you'll hear I just remember I did an interview with somebody and they just got on and they were super zooted. And I was like, are you just smoking? Is that just what this interview is? Or I remember once at the at Big Improv, I had some guests come over there for an interview and they came in with bottles of tequila. They were lit. And I was like, oh, this is going to be a fun interview. No questions are going to be answered here. It's just going to be just riffing. And that's literally what the interview became. So I'm talking about something like that. You know what I mean?
Well, that specifically is common in the recording studio. Not going to hold you. I think alcohol as a social lubricant helps people be more comfortable. Obviously, in moderation, that's very important.
Yes.
As with other substances, and that's not a. I don't think that's a weird thing for my studio, at least. So let me try and think of something that really stands out. But it's really about context, right? I think there are actually a lot of things that if you mention them from a given set, you could pick any given session I've had.
Yeah.
And there's probably at least a couple of details about what was done that if you take it out of the context of the session, you're like, that's bizarre. That's weird.
What were you doing?
For example, I dance super silly. Sometimes it's partially intentional, but it's mostly not intentional. But that's just how I dance. Yeah. And I love dancing if that's what the music is gonna do to me. Yeah. And to show that I'm listening, and I'm being moved by it. I'm interacting with it. Mm-hmm. And I just think if you just looked at me sitting in my chair, because I'll be in all sorts of weird positions. I got one hand on my control surface, one hand on my mouse, and I'm also looking over into the booth or back if we're recording in here. I think I just look. I think my physical presentation is probably the most consistently bizarre thing. I do. I see pictures of me in the studio. I look like some sort of cross between a ladybug and a tarantula. I don't know because I got the beard down. Yeah. I'd say I get myself into some silly positions and silly dance moves in the studio. That's my answer for that one.
That's great. That's similar to me if I'm like in the market and you know how they're playing. It's like, oh snap, it's 80s hour, hell yeah! And I remember it was this is gonna be ridiculous. It was some song by Go West called like Call Me. And I'm like, hell yeah! I'm like in the cracker aisle, have you just getting loose, and it was just like some older lady. She pops up behind me in the line as I'm cashing out Wegmans, and she's like, "Saw a little cute dance moves back there," and I was like, shit. I was like, look, and I'm like 6'4", so it's embarrassing. It's like a lot of body just moving around next to the Ritz.
Yeah, I'm not as tall as you, but I got some thickness, so I'm the same way. I'm like a lot of body. Like if I'm dancing, you're gonna see it. Like
it's no hiding.
Yeah. Like it's in the room. If you're in the room, you're gonna notice.
That's what it is. Like it's just like, yo, who is that bear in the corner dancing? Like, why are you here? So this is the last real question I have. So for you, if one comes to mind, has there been a life experience that really has like shaped your creative sensibility? And you may have kind of alluded to it, touched on it very early on in the podcast, but what comes to mind? Like, and this question came up after speaking with someone who has a background in theater, and she kind of like brought this story out that she reminded me of it. When I was a kid, I was like a master's of ceremony. I was like 5 and on stage and just being able to do the whole thing. Now I'm like terrified of that, but now just doing it then and always having this interest as a kid of here's these things you should probably know about, sharing little details about movies and things of that nature. And this is a version of it. Like, you don't know about Station North Sound? Well, you don't know about Station North Sound. So that's kind of a thing for me, and being able to present it and amplify it and like introduce this to a broader audience. That's what I think in some ways has shaped me of who I am at 37 versus who I was at like maybe 5. So for you, what would be an experience that has helped shape you creatively?
I kind of want to keep it real, to be honest, and it might get a little dark.
Please do.
Some of my music is very dark, so I guess it shouldn't be surprising. I was not diagnosed with ADHD until I was 27 now.
Oh.
And I did really well in school for a long time because I was smart, but I always struggled and with certain things like organization, homework. And when I graduated high school, I went right to college. I went to a fancy college in Massachusetts called Amherst College. And it's a really great school. And I had a terrible time there, and it didn't have much to do with the school or the people there. They were all great. It had to do with me and my mental health. And I had put on academic probation. I had to take time off. I had to do classes at other colleges. And it was just a whole thing. And after a point, I was like, fuck it. Like, I don't want to do this. Yeah. It's killing me. I am not happy, and I'm like barely surviving. I need to do something different. And so I moved back to Baltimore, and I started making beats again. And I hadn't made beats for a long time. I had made beats when I was like in middle school. It was probably the age of like 12 to like 15. And then I took a long break from it and concentrated on other things for whatever reason. For a long time, I was really interested, and I still am. And this is one of the reasons actually me and Easy Bond is because I really like public policy and politics. That's like my other thing. It's not common for musicians to be really into that, but I am into government policy and how it affects people's lives. That's like something that I care about and think about a lot. And obviously Easy does too. You know, he's really the GOAT with that. Back to the story. I thought I wanted to like be a lawyer or like work in a think tank for a long time. And when I dropped out of college, basically, I was like, look, this isn't going to work out. What the hell am I going to do? Right. And I started making beats again in this period of like incredible depression and like self-rejection. And that experience of like, And then I like sent them to some people. I like played them for some people, and just the reactions I got, like it was like, oh, like because I would tell people I was depressed, or I would tell people I was sad, or I was disappointed, or things weren't working out for me the way I wanted them to. But then when I played them the music, it was like it hit them so differently. Like they were really able to understand me. And that experience, I think, really cemented in my brain that music can really help people express things they need to express in order to feel heard, that they can't otherwise, or they're not able to otherwise. And that's, I think, super important, because that helped me get through that time in my life. And that was very important. So, sorry to make it, I don't want to end on a dark note. No, it's not a dark note, I'm honestly super grateful that I had music and that I had, the wherewithal to even do that. And I'm grateful for the people who listened to me early on and listened to my stuff and said it was good. Shout out Matt at Mobtown. He's an engineer that's always, and producer, and he's actually a drummer himself. He's one of the first people that I ever worked with who was like, yeah, actually your beats are fire.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, okay. That's cool.
That's great. That's big, and yeah, I'm around a very similar scenario that you're describing. Then I think once this episode drops, the person's going to listen. I'll make sure they listen to it just to get that kind of feedback. They're in a school situation, and they're having some of those things and not really feeling like where they want to be at. And it's like, well, maybe that's not your thing right now. Maybe your thing is something else, and it's going to be fun. Literally, that's what it is. And as a person who, I always joke about this being my most stable and longest relationship during this whole podcast journey. And, it was a point where, going back, it was another podcast that I was doing. I was super depressed. This was about like 10 years ago. Wasn't sure what my identity was. Depersonalization, the whole thing. I was so attached to what my job was and what my career was. And when that whole thing is taken from you, you feel like you've lost part of yourself. And, so it's good to hear that. It's good to hear that you were able to find this thing that you dug, making music, making beats, and getting that feedback from someone that you have a connection with. And yeah, that's cool. Not dark at all. The tone goes down, so that's funny, but not dark at all. But now it's going to get stupid. So
Let's stupid. Let's do it.
So I got some rapid fire questions for you. I got 5 of them. And you know how rapid fire works. We're not looking for those long, drawn out answers. We're just looking for top of the mind, what hits. All right. What's that number one trait that you value in friends?
Loyalty.
Last movie you watched?
The new Batman.
Nice. Crunchy or creamy?
Crunchy.
Okay.
Definitely.
Side quest here. What kind of jelly with that?
Ooh, I'm a preserves guy.
Okay, what flavor preserves?
I would say orange marmalade.
Really?
Yeah, I like with like pieces of orange in it. I like the preserve. I also like raspberry. Maybe I should have said raspberry might be my top, actually. Okay. With like little like raspberry in there. That's the move.
I usually go with if I'm going chunky, I'm going to go strawberry preserves.
Great, great choice.
Because you got to have the texture. But if you go creamy,
but that's the thing. Okay. What's your move with the creamy?
It's got to go just classic, just jelly, just straight grape jelly. Yeah.
With white bread with no crust, huh?
Oh yeah, toast points just at an angle. Make sure it's 90 degrees. Anything less is uncivilized. Like, what are we doing? And definitely, if I can get if we're talking jelly, right? Purely, if you're getting a biscuit, it always has to be grape jelly. Let's just keep it. Let's just be gentlemen. Let's be gentlemen and shake hands. Like, what are we doing here? This is another food one because I am a foodie. This month that we're recording this is a lot of food interviews is going out this month. So call it what it is. Goldfish or Cheez-Its?
Goldfish.
Blasphemy. Philistine.
I mean, I don't love either of them.
Okay.
I am kind of a snob when it comes to my crackers. I am not a snob when it comes to a lot of food. Uh-huh. I will eat just about anything, but
cracker snob.
I am a cracker snob. I great. Like because it's something that I've done since I was like in college and I had my own mini fridge. Yeah. I've kept I like actual cheese.
Absolutely.
My crackers. And like I always have it on hand. I've got it in the studio. Like I've got some, I actually have some grated Pecorino Romano, and I have some Gouda, goat. Actually, it's goat Gouda, and it's great. I like actual cheese on my crackers. I don't like my crackers coming with baked in orange flavor.
Stop it. We're gonna have a deep cheese conversation, because I'm the type of dude that'll go to the Whole Foods, drop like $100 on some cheese, and like, yo, we're doing our charcuterie plate, so let's make it happen.
Whole Foods cheese bar kills my bank account, man. Kills it. It's like you can't walk out of Whole Foods. I have a hard time walking out of Whole Foods spending less than $100 too.
Always.
It's it. And like you look at you're like, wait, I got one bag of groceries.
They pack it so well,
Yeah, I spent freaking $100. This is not sustainable. But
so this is the last one. This is the last one. Aside from, well, actually, you know what? I'm gonna throw this one out there. It's an old, like, I think rap reference or what have you. Who gets the props? If there was like one person you want to like signal out, it's not they're better than anyone else, but who's one person that you're like, you know what, I want to shine a little light and give a little love to this person in Baltimore. Who would it be?
I'm gonna say two guys I've been making music with lately, who've I've really connected with, and I'm really happy with what we're doing. Chris Cassius and Vlad. I'm gonna shout them out. I think they're dope. I think Chris Cassius and Vlad have the best bars in Baltimore.
Okay.
Like they are the best bar for bar rappers in Baltimore. They also happen to be like incredibly genuine friends and people. And so shout out to them for that.
Maybe a conversation that needs to be facilitated with a noble podcaster in East Baltimore. I'll leave that to you to sort out.
We can definitely get that happening.
Yeah. So that's pretty much it for all I had. But one, I want to thank you for coming onto this podcast, sharing your story and telling us about your work and all. And two, I want to invite you and encourage you to tell the fine folks where to check your work out, check you out, all of that good stuff.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Rob. When I plug myself, I will say my handle on Instagram is @StationNorthSound. I have a website I'm currently redesigning. It's not that good, but it's stationnorthsound.com. My email, yes, stationnorthsound@gmail.com. And again, the name of my business is Station North Sound. My name is William, though. I go by William. Just don't call me Bill or Billy. Anything else is cool. And I really appreciate this opportunity, Rob. So thank you.
Absolutely. This has been great. The same way that you don't like to be called Billy, I do not like to be called Bobby. Can't do it. Someone called me Bobby. I was like, look, man, I got a knife in my pocket. We have a different conversation.
Not the knife. Not getting pointy with it, Bobby.
Like,
uh-oh.
All right, Bill. For Bill and Bob's Excellent Adventure. So for William Herman of Station North Sound, I am Rob Lee, saying that there is music, art, community in and around your city, Baltimore specifically. You just got to look for it.